So now we are in second important chapters in the geography. Actually, we have to complete the two chapters in the geography for this term. For this year, you will be having two terms, means two board exams will be there for you people. It's not like as like in last year. Last year we had only one board exams, but in this year we will be having two board exams like midterms. Midterm 1, the term 1 will be as a board exam 1. Then term 2 it's a board exam 2 there. It will be considered, the both marks of these exams, board exams will be considered equally. So for this, the chapters, the total chapters as bifurcated. In the geography, you will have two chapters for the term 1. In a history, you will be having one chapter for the term 1. And for like economics and civics, you will be having two, and means like two each will be having chapters in economics and civics. Now we are in the second chapter of geography. You will complete this book like a disciplines geography, then you will go for history, then economics, civics. So now we are in a second chapter. Actually, according to the syllabus, the second chapter is water resources. The water resources will not be included. You don't get a questions of a water resources chapter from the water resource chapter in the term 1. But whatever the maps are there in the water resource will be given. Means you will get a questions based on the map work which is there in the second chapter like water resources. So we will discuss about these maps after completion of all the syllabus. And finally we will discuss about this, and we will have two, 3, 4 classes for the map work. And we will discuss deeply about all those things after the discussion about all these chapters. So we are in the second chapter. The name, before going to discuss about the name, let me discuss all the histories and the base about all those things. So after that, and you need to say, you need to tell, and most of you know the name of a chapter, but the people who don't know, the students who don't know the name of a chapter, and I am expecting the name of this chapter from you people. So let me explain. Like everything on the earth's surface, it's having its own value. Is not everything on the earth's surface, it's having its own value. That's what we discussed in the first chapter. It's called as resources. So here, and everything, it's every resources, or the thing also, every resources, it's categorized, or it's a part of one minimum, at least one classification. Any resources, suppose this pen, it's also the part of resources. It's not, it's a resources, it's a thing, substances, it's a part of resources. It comes under category, one category, minimum one category. It comes under many categories, but for example, it comes under one category. Like, so how can we categorize? Under what basis we can categorize these things? It's a substance, is not? It's a one thing. How can we categorize? On what basis we can categorize? On which group you are going to put this under or in? In which group you are going to put this? As an example. Yes, human made. It's a human made resources. Means every resources, everything will be having at least one, or it will be included in one classifications, or one divisions, or one type, or one identification. So it's the human made resources. And the board. What is the, how can you put in which category we are going to put this board under? Yes, the same, the human resources. The me means like me, human being. Yes, it's a human resources, because I have a good health, of course, and so I have knowledge, and I am doing service, isn't it? It's a teaching. I am doing service, my service, social service, you know. So I am comes under this human resource. I am categorized under the human resource. So everything, just like everything, is categorized in some other basis based on many other factors. Every substance on the surface, it's put under many divisions, many types, many classifications. Is not? So most of these classifications are made by the means every classification are made by the human beings. Is not? But the things which is categorized mostly it's all the human made things. Whatever the things are categorized, it's all the human made things. And we have some categorized natural resources. Under that we have some categories like living things and non-living things, biotic and abiotic. It's somewhat less, but the thing which is having more classification, it's all made up of human beings, like made by the human beings. The things which is having more categories and classifications, it's mostly made by the human beings, like human made things. Everybody or every human people who has knowledge, skill, talent, they are under the process of creating a new things or modifying the natural resources into human made resources from the ancient period. Earlier, before thousands together years back, or lakhs together years back, on the earth's surface, the most of the things was natural resources. But now, then comparing with the natural resources, the human made resources are more, which like human beings are using. But natural resources are more comparatively, because the whole earth itself is natural resources. We cannot compare the human made things into this. So, no, I'm not going in that way. So like the things which we are making use of that daily, most is made by the human beings. Everything is not. So it's all required. The natural resources also required, and the human made resources also required. But like the thing which is made by the human beings, like most of the things are physical things, and which is important. And now everybody, like the human resources are under the process, or under the activity of creating a new things. Everybody are involved in the work. They are busy in creating the new things by modifying, by extracting the things from the natural resource to the human resources, by modifying that. They are busy. Everybody. And you could see, you might be you might be gone across with any like every activities on the earth's surface, means a daily life, from morning to till night, late night. You'll be getting many other activities which is done by the human beings. Every activities, most of the activities are done to get a money, income. It's all called as economic activities. Except unless and until she is a mother. So she does nurturing her children, and she takes care of her family members and her children. And from morning towards till night, she'll be continuously busy in her work, domestic work. So without expecting anything. So it's not economic work. She don't get a money for that. She don't get a money for her work. Except that, and whatever the work we do, whatever the work we see in surrounding us, it's all having economic value. So it's called as economic activity. So these economic activities as categorized under 3. Every activity is as categorized in some other classifications. We discussed about this in the last class, isn't it? So there are 4 important classifications in the economic activity. What are those? Primary activities, secondary activities, tertiary activity, then quaternary activities. These are the 4 classifications what we have. One is the primary activity, like the activity which is mainly which is connected with the natural resources, the natural things. Means like a farmer, for example, the best example, farmer. The farmer is connected, means it's well interacted, is well dependent with the natural things, like a soil, and he'll make use of a soil. He'll get help of a sunlight and the air, water, and he grows some crops. The most of the things he get from the nature, just he need to maintain all those things. He manages to grow the crop. It's a primary activity. The primarily we get from the nature. It's a primary activity, we are dependent on the nature. Then secondary activity, they are the activity or the process of modifying the things, modifying the natural things. The natural things what we get from the nature, so we are modifying that, completely modifying, changes into different things. It's called as secondary activity. It's modifying, manufacturing the things. It's a secondary activity. Tertiary activity, like services, like a teacher, doctor, engineers, and the drivers. Even the drivers also comes under these services, who helps the both primary activity and secondary activities, services we discuss. Then quaternary activity, like information technology, it comes under the quaternary activity. So here in this geography chapters what we have in this book, and chapter after chapters it explains about this all the divisions, all the classification or types of economic activities. Now what we are going to discuss is about the primary activities, one of the examples of primary activity. Then next we will be discussing about secondary activity. Means the chapter explains about the secondary activity, one of the secondary activities. And next in the last two chapters we will be explaining or we will be discussing about one of the examples of tertiary activity. Same like that. So now in this chapter we will be discussing about the primary activities, one of the examples of primary activities. So what is the main example of primary activities? Which is very basic for every human being on the earth surface, basic activity from the ancient period, and it's been a basic activity. Mainly Indians, most of the Indian population is dependent on that activity. Yes, it's agriculture. Agriculture. So in this chapter we will be discussing the agriculture. 8th class we had a same concept. It's not in the 8th class we had a same concept there, but there we discuss very briefly the important points, all those things we discuss, the types of farming and the crops, important crops we discuss in the 8th class. But now along with that in the 9th class we will be connecting with the other activities like the programs, national government programs which is supporting for the agriculture. Then like a contribution of agriculture in the national economy. So we will be relating with all these factors in these chapters. And the first of what we will be discussing exactly about agriculture and its types and the cropping pattern in India and the important crops we will be discussing. So now the agriculture. And already you know the meaning of agriculture, is not? You know the meaning of agriculture. What is agriculture? What is agriculture? The word itself, the agriculture word itself has a meaning in it. This agri is not an English word, it's a Latin word. Agri. So agri is nothing but the soil. Agri refers to the soil. The cultivation or culture is nothing but cultivation. Cultivation. That means the cultivation of soil is called as agriculture. It's very simple. This agriculture word is derived from the Latin word. So now we will be discussing the definition of agriculture. So before the definition of agriculture, we discuss the derivations and we discuss history about agriculture. It's a Latin word. It is a Latin word. In the Latin, agri or ager, it refers to soil. And culture means cultivation. Then that agriculture that explains is that refers to the cultivation of the soil. The cultivation of soil. It's agriculture. So here the definition is it's an art. The agriculture it's an art, science, art and science of cultivating soil, growing crops, and rearing livestock. It's agriculture. Agriculture is art. We'll discuss why we say it as agriculture. Agriculture is art and science. We'll discuss why we call it as art and science. and it's the art and science of cultivating the soil, growing crops and rearing livestock. So agriculture is not only growing the crops, it has a many process, it includes a many process, mainly the cultivation of the soil. So what is this cultivation of soil? You know, growing crops. You know about that, growing crops. What is this cultivating the soil, cultivation of the soil? Cultivation of soil is nothing but preparing the soil for growing some crops by adding or by scientifically preparing that by plowing or by creating some patches of land. It's like cultivating the soil by adding manure, fertilizers. So it's all cultivating soil. So if we take care about the soil, if we increase the fertility of a soil, the humus of a soil, it will be helpful to grow the crop. Is it not? Then not only growing a crop, rearing livestock, animal husband, like along with that, like animal herdings. So it's also comes under this agriculture. It's also included in the agriculture activity. Is that clear? So it's a basic definition. In India, agriculture is a primary activity. Not in India, in the whole world, agriculture is a primary activity. Primary activity. So earlier, it is a primary activity, the basic activity. Now, along with the primary activity, now it's a primary economic activity. Did you understand the meaning of this? In the ancient period, when the human beings they step into the civilization, they were the uses of agriculture. They were not growing a crop to sell the crop in a market or to get some income. They were not growing the crops. They were growing the crops in a particular agriculture field to satisfy their needs. They are chopping off trees and they were burning the wood, dry wood, and they were getting a fertility of soil itself by adding the rainfall into that, and they were sowing the seed and they were getting the crop. After getting the crop, they were harvesting and they were collecting and they were consuming for themselves, their family members and their community. That's it. They were not using that crop for selling that in a market. So it was a primary activity to lead their life. To live, it was main activity for them, means for us. But now, along with that, now also we are many people they depend on that. They are leading their life because of agriculture life. Along with that, it has become primary economic activity. Economic is nothing but money. So now, to get an income, to get a profit, to have a trading activity, the agriculture is also used in a different way. It varies, it has many different types. It varies from primitive to the commercial. Earlier it was a primitive. Primitive is old basic one. It was a primitive activity. Now it has become commercial activity. Along with the primitive, it has become a commercial. Commercial means to have to get a money, to get an income in that by selling all the products. So in India, around 2/3, 2 by 3 or 2/3 of population depended on agriculture. Even now also, the 2/3 of population is depending on agriculture activity. The most of the part of India, they are depending on agriculture activity. So most land after forest cover, it's agriculture. Then the urbanization, transportation. So agriculture, we have given somewhat more prominent to the agriculture. We have given some more interest in agriculture activity because we know about that. And it's our basic activities and our culture, our philosophy that says about agriculture and importance of agriculture. So that's the reason even now many people they are depending on that agricultural activity. Write this concept. points. Next we'll go for the types of agriculture activity. Is it over? Okay. Types of agriculture. Types of agriculture in India. We are discussing related with the India, mainly the Indian activities. So these types of agriculture is we are practicing, the Indians, we are practicing different types of agriculture in India. So this, it is based on, or it is influenced by the different physical environment. And we have many physical features on the earth surface of India, mainly earth landform of India. So there, because of that, the many people who are residing or who are inhabited in the different places, they are practicing different types of activities, like different methods of agriculture. So methods of agriculture, it's varying in India because of different physical environment and different climatic conditions and the soil type available and about like irrigation facilities. So based on all those things, the method of agriculture, the types is nothing but method of agriculture is varying different based on physical environment, so method, like method of agriculture is different in India because of the physical environment. Not only in India, in every places the method of agriculture changes because of physical environment. Suppose it is a plain area, there we practices different method. Suppose it's a slopey area and the area which is suppose covered by the forest, you will be practicing more there, isn't it? So this physical environment that influences for having a different types of agriculture. Then climatic conditions, climatic characters or conditions. I said some conditions. Climatic factors and soil types. Based on the different soil types, based on the availability of the different soils, we grow different crops with a different method. Suppose it's a laterite soil. There, the laterite soil, suppose the area is filled by the laterite soil. As we discussed in the last chapter, laterite soil is not having much humus, and fertility is not there in the laterite soil. In that area, the method of agriculture, it changes. Method like uses more fertilizer, chemical fertilizer, and we use irrigation facility there. We use more SYB seeds. High yield varieties of seeds we use there. It's a different method. So this method of agriculture, the types of agriculture varies because of these soil types mainly, then climatic factors like a high temperature, low temperature, that areas that influences for having different types of agriculture. So in India we have mainly two types of agriculture. The two important types of agriculture in India is mainly subsistence agriculture and commercial agriculture. These are the two types of agriculture. One is subsistence, another commercial agriculture. So in under the subsistence agriculture we have two types. One is primitive subsistence agriculture, and here we have intensive subsistence agriculture. So here in under the commercial agriculture itself a big concept, is like it's a separate concept. So in under this, for example, it's not having types, but it's an example. We have like a plantation and mixed farming. We have two important types. One is subsistence farming, and another one commercial agriculture, commercial farming. These are the two types. Right on? So now I will briefly explain about these two things, then I will go for writing points about these two classifications. So our types. So we have two types, one is subsistence and commercial. Subsistence agriculture, like this agriculture which is done to satisfy the need of the farmers and his family members. Like whatever the activities or whatever the agriculture process, agriculture activity which is done here in the subsistence agriculture, there after getting a yield there in this activity, in these types of activity, that yield or that product will be used to satisfy their needs, to consume themselves. But in the commercial, it's totally opposite. Whatever the crops are grown in the commercial agriculture, it's only to sell in the market. Is it visible? It's means their intention is to get up income from their crops, whichever they grow in the agriculture field. These are the two important different factors. In both things they grow the crops, but the intention is different. The intention here in the subsistence is to get use of that like a product to satisfy their needs and to consume themselves directly. But here to get a money, to have a trade activities. Is that what? Okay. So in under the subsistence farming, we have two types. One is intensive and primitive. Left to right first, primitive. Primitive subsistence farming, then intensive subsistence farming. So now I will briefly explain about these two concepts, then I will write the points. The primitive, the word primitive, it refers to old thing. So it's a primitive. Primitive subsistence farming, like the main example is slash and burn agriculture, shifting agriculture. You know, when the civilization has started, before the starting of the civilization of a human being, the people, we knew how to grow the agriculture, how to grow the crops. The agriculture type was different at that time. They knew how to grow the crops. You know history about all those things. There they used to chop the trees, they used to cut the trees in the forest, because most of the area was forest cover at that time. And then afterwards they used to come back after hunting all the animals. They used to come back after the 2 or 3 months. By the time that all the trees, whatever the chopped trees were getting dry, and they used to put a fire by using a rock. You know what that? The two pieces of a rock. By using that, they used to fire, and they used to burn that things, and at last they will be getting ashes. Then again they used to come back after 2-3 months. By the time the ashes, it was mixing with the water, the rainfall water, then it was getting a fertility for the soil. Then they used to sow the seeds, whatever the seeds they were needed, they used to sow, and after 4 or 5 months they used to come back, they were getting yields, they were getting a crop from there. Then they used to shift the land. They were not continuing there in the same land, because once they got a agriculture, means once they harvested that, once they got a crop, the soil was losing fertility. So that reason they used to change their agriculture field. They used to go other places. They used to do the same thing. So it's called as slash and burn. Same, it's also called as shifting agriculture, because they were not practiced in one place. They were not practicing in one place. They were shifting into the other places. So it's called as shifting as well as slash and burn agriculture. So it's also called as primitive subsistence farming. Even now also we are practicing this primitive subsistence agriculture. Even now. So in the eastern part of India, in the central part of India, and Brazil, and in Africa, in America, means in the North America, there are some part or there are areas they are practicing the primitive subsistence. In India, in some part of India, they are practicing this primitive agriculture. Most of the Indian agriculture, it is practicing this intensive subsistence farming. But now some part of areas, it still is there, like Mizoram, Manipur, Assam, Nagaland, and like Madhya Pradesh, part of Andaman Nicobar, and Andhra Pradesh. They are still practicing this primitive subsistence farming. Here, the plot of a land which they used to grow, the size of a land is somewhat small. The size of land is small. So here, since it's a very small plot of land or agricultural land, the family members, they act as the laborers. Means they work. They only work, and they plow the land by using some animals, and they will sow the seed, they will weed, and they will harvesting. All the process, everything will be done by the family members. And after getting the yield from there, they will be consuming their products, means like crops. They use the crops to satisfy their family needs and to satisfy their needs. They don't use as much fertilizer, chemical fertilizer, and HYV weeds, because since it's a very small plant, there is no need of much using the chemical fertilizers, because they are poor family, they are poor people. So that reason they have small plot of land, they are poor, and they cannot afford for the HYV weeds. You will pay seeds, you will be having the money. You need to pay much more money for getting the seeds, high yield varieties of seeds, and chemical fertilizer. So that reason they don't add much all those things. They are mainly dependent on monsoon season, so that they will get a rainfall there. So here they don't get a yield, because they are not adding this all the important seeds, HYV seeds, and the fertilizer, and it is not much having more size in the plot. So that's the reason they don't get a much yield. But here in the intensive same, but somewhat bigger in the size. Means like a plot of like size of a plot will be somewhat bigger. This activity, intensive subsistence farming activity, it takes place in the place where having more population present. Means population means in the cities and in the villages it will be practiced more here. But here in the forest areas, remote areas, forest areas it will be practiced there. Here the places which having population present, and near there they will be having more settlements, villages, towns, and cities will be there here. And here they use high-yield varieties of seeds and chemical fertilizers. More chemical fertilizers, high-yield varieties of seeds they use here. So since they are making use of all those things, they will get a much yield. The most of the things they use for satisfying their needs, family needs, and some surplus thing, means like a balanced or whatever remained, it will be sold in the market or in their locality, they will be selling. So it's about intensive subsistence farming. Both comes under the primitive like a subsistence farming, but having somewhat differences. We will discuss about all these differences with a commercial farming in the next class. So now what we discuss about the agriculture and its definition, and somewhat we discuss these types of agriculture. We will continue about this concept in the next classes.